Hello, I am Beth and I am back for another live. Shortly, the relationship experts will be joining me to talk about the best topic here. We are going to be talking about top tips for building a stronger marriage. So the experts will be joining me soon from the Relationship Boosters, but before they do, let me quickly introduce myself. I am Beth from Soulify Wellness and I am a marriage coach. And I help women, often who are on the verge of divorce, get to this beautiful place where they no longer feel triggered by their partners. And they do this by doing the inner work. And once they've done the inner work, they no longer feel angry or upset or frustrated or jealous within their marriage. So let me get ready to introduce our relationship boosters who will be popping in shortly. They are this amazing team of licensed therapists. They are from Laurel, Maryland, and they help couples get to a place where they can improve their communication, they can improve the intimacy, they improve the connection, and they do this by strengthening the relationship they help their clients strengthen the relationship with themselves so that they can enhance the relationship with others. They do so much different training as well. They help with mental health professionals and help coach them. They help couples of different cultural backgrounds get to a place where they can develop the language so that they can have those conversations. They can have those conversations about history, background, and beliefs. They have been featured in a ton of different magazines and radio. So I am so excited for them to get here, and they're coming in shortly so that we can talk about these top tips for building stronger marriages. So they are just hanging out here. I just need them to request to join. And if they request to join, they can come on in. But there's so much that we can talk about in regards to tips for marriages. And here they come. A lot of times strengthening that relationship with ourselves so that we can strengthen our relationship with others. So in just a second, hello, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
I'm great, thank you. So, you want to take a moment and introduce yourself? I just did a quick intro.
Okay, so I am Dr. Kia. I'm a licensed therapist, but I also do relationship coaching. I help people who are disconnected get reconnected in their relationships. I love to see people like building healthy relationships and be able to like thrive, especially, after, like everyday life gets in the way of a relationship, right? So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Amazing. And you are like a team of therapists. You have this
Mm-hmm.
incredible practice where you are helping mainly women or couples? Couples usually, right?
Couples and women. Well, we work with men too. Do we help?
You help
Yeah.
anyone who has some troubles, you're there. You're the people to go to.
Yeah, we do help a lot of couples. And there are three of us. So it's myself, Monica, and Carol Ann. They're seeing people now, so they're not present. But yeah, we work as a team to be able to help people in their
Amazing.
relationship.
You probably have such a busy practice. Like people are really struggling with their marriages. And I don't know what your thoughts are. I'd love to hear, like pandemic wise, do you feel like it's been helpful for marriages or do you think it's been challenging for relationships?
No, that's such an interesting question. Because I think there's been like this divide. Like some people have really thrived. Like even some people like that I saw that were on the brink of like divorce prior to the pandemic. That whole like y'all gonna sit here and figure this thing out because you're gonna be stuck with each other for a little while. That whole thing made people figure like, all right, so we're here. Let's do what we can do, right? So there's so many people that took an opportunity to fix their relationships, and then of course, then you have the flip where there were some people that were like, we have been so disconnected for so long, and there's so many unresolved issues that we haven't talked about for years, and now that we're sitting together, like it's like you can't even say hello without it being seen as a bad thing. So I would say that there's both, but on the good side, I'll say that there was research that said that the pandemic was going to destroy like all of these relationships. And there's been some research to show that the pandemic has actually helped people in their relationships, which was not the prediction. So yeah, so, I see it both ways. And I do think it's helpful, because when you first start dating someone, you spend a lot of time with them, like you're on the phone, you're like doing all these things that are like intense, like getting to know them. And I feel like the pandemic forced people to do that again.
Yeah, absolutely. And like looking at divorce rates, like they're not increasing because of the pandemic. You're right. I feel like like you just said, just to kind of elaborate, the pandemic did multiple things to people. It put a lot of problems under a microscope because you don't have a lot of places to go. And you either had two choices. You either avoid those and things get worse, or you deal with them because they're these like gifts that are right here for you. You can work on these and things will get better. So I feel like a lot of people have done that inner work lately to really get themselves to a better place because they had time to be still with their thoughts and realize, you know what, things aren't going the way I want, and they could really reevaluate and figure out what they want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think the word that you used is good, like gift. Like, you know, these things that you weren't going to resolve now are actually here for you to take a look at and really have what you want. So yeah, I think that the pandemic forced people to either you're going to enjoy this life that you have in these relationships or or you're not, right? And what are you going to
Yeah.
do about that to make sure it goes
Oh,
in the direction that you need?
absolutely. So let's talk about going in the direction that we need our marriages to go. What would you say, like, if you had to pick one, and I know you probably have a long, long list, what is your top tip for creating stronger marriages? Or maybe what's the foundation? Where's the jumping off point with all of this?
Well, I would say the jumping off point is friendship. And there's multiple components in friendship. I don't know. Do you see that as well? Like friendship
Oh,
being
yeah,
like a major thing with
absolutely.
the people you work with?
Yeah, with I work primarily with women, and I would say friendship is really important because then you're not acting as roommates. You're more than just roommates. Because often I find some of the women I work with, they've lost that emotional, physical intimacy, and all of a sudden they're roommates. They just talk about the things that need to be done in the house. It's very logistical. It's like a business
Mm-hmm.
transaction of a
Yeah.
marriage. So I think when you can get back to that fun, playful, laughing, enjoying each other's company and conversation, that's a beautiful thing, right? And priceless.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just thinking about like the components in friendship and how you get back to that whole like let's enjoy our life, because I think that what you're talking about is real life. Like the real life gets in the way, and then people become like business partners, and it's like that's not what we're supposed to be doing. Like we're supposed to be enjoying this life together. So like listening, I think is like one of the things that people miss or forget, like when they've been together for a minute, because you know this person so well, sometimes you don't listen in the same way you did early in the relationship.
Oh, that is good. You know what? Because sometimes you feel like I've heard this answer, and your mind actually starts to predict what they're going to say instead of just being present and listening to what is their answer right now. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
I've definitely been guilty of that for sure. I'm like already like, I don't need to hear that. You've told me this before, but you're right. Just listen, hear them out. That's all we all want to be. We all want to be heard.
Mm-hmm. And the key to being heard is to actually listen, which is which is weird, right?
Oh, that is so true. The key to being heard is to listen. It's like really lovingly hear them. And sometimes we don't have time, and that's a big piece of this too. I work with a lot of really busy moms, and like we
Mm-hmm.
don't have time to talk. So that's one of the reasons the communication really breaks down is because we have to prioritize what's more important, making sure the floor is vacuumed after dinner or actually having that like 10-minute conversation that needs to be had. That
Right.
maybe isn't just about the to-do list for tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree. And it's really about prioritizing that over the other stuff that you feel like needs to be priority. It's like, well, you know, you're because even like people that are work that like the people that are working, it's like I have to make this money, and it's like, okay, well, guess what, if this relationship fails, how are you going to be able to show up the way that you want to while you're making this money that you're making? Or you know, like you're talking about like cleaning up, like you're talking, are you even going to get the same joy and satisfaction out of having this clean house if the relationship is in turmoil? So it's like, let's really rethink what we're doing. And not that those things are not important, because they absolutely are, but so is, you know, so are these conversations that we need to have to make our relationship thrive. And the more your relationship is thriving, the better results you'll even have in these other areas of your life, because you're not worried about, you know, the state of your relationship and worried about I'm not being heard and I'm not being listened to. Like you know, you're able to progress, and that's, you know, both people.
That is really important. I hear this as well. What about like when you first start dating someone and you have that friendship, but you also have that like kind of intense connection when you're first dating someone, you're dating your partner. were you vacuuming the floor or were you having the conversation? So
Right.
what are we avoiding in all of this that you want to vacuum versus have the conversation? I guess we get into such a place of doing and not being.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that. Because being helps you to do. And I think that that part gets lost many times. So just going back to the foundation of listening helps to build the friendship, because the second thing that kind of goes into that friendship is knowing who you're with. And it's really hard to know who you're with if you're not listening, right? Because you have to, in order to get to that point of knowing who they are. Because as we get older, as we grow, as we we change. And so who I was 5 years ago is not necessarily who I am today. And in order for us to make sure we're growing together, you have to know who I am and what's making me move the way that I'm moving today. So if you don't know who I am, how can you even walk beside me or support me the way that I need to be supported in my life? Because you're going to do it wrong because you don't know me well enough to be able to show up the way that I need you to show up. So it's
Yeah,
just really like going back to like the foundations of knowing who I am today and continuing to learn who I am as a partner moving forward.
that's great because I will hear words like, I don't feel understood. He's always misunderstanding me. I guess that probably is really language for saying, I want you to know me better. Let's get to know each other instead
Mm.
of it just being, I'm misunderstood. How do you start to create that again? Sometimes there's so much resentment or resistance within a marriage. You're like, I don't even feel connected to this person. How do I get to know them again and do so it feels natural and not awkward?
The awkward. Because we don't want that. But you know, what I would say is the easiest way to kind of like even get that back on the table is dating. Like, go back to the basics of what even gave you the space to connect, and dating in a way that puts all of the business conversations on the back burner and just like the relationship, and our connection and our intimacy, like prioritizing that in the moment. So specific dates that are going to really get us laughing and connecting and like wanting to know more about each other.
Yeah. So what if you have nothing in common anymore? Like you're so distant that you don't even enjoy being with them anymore. Like you've just created such a wall. What do you do then? Because instead of like, you're like, I don't know if I want to hang out with them
Hmm.
because you're so resentful, you're bitter. You're like,
And some of that, and I would love to know what you do as well, but some of that is inner work too, because why am I resentful and what do I need to do differently? Because sometimes resentment comes because I've given so much and I feel like I haven't gotten anything back. And so now I don't feel like being around you and I don't want to be bothered. But the reality is maybe we have to evaluate, like, what are our boundaries, and have we communicated our boundaries in a way that allows this other person to even do what what we need them or want them to do for us. Because sometimes the other person is really interested in doing that, right? But they have no idea, and they're gonna do what they think is good for them, and then it's like, I hate that. Like, why are you doing this?
oh, it's, yeah, absolutely. Like we're on the same team. And so often we forget that we're on the same team with our partner. We think that they're attacking us or they're trying to do this to us on purpose. But really, our partners are just doing the best they can with what they know based on their own inner work that needs to be done. So I'm so glad you brought up inner work. In the work I do, I think one of the foundations for figuring out what work needs to be done inwardly is really just to figure out how you feel. If you're feeling a certain way with a conversation, like you're feeling frustrated or you're feeling angry, you're feeling jealous, really that's for me, the jumping off point to doing the inner work is, why do I feel this way? What is my body communicating to me right now that I feel so angry? What part of me doesn't feel heard, doesn't feel seen, doesn't feel understood, doesn't feel like things are fair, doesn't feel like smart enough, doesn't feel adequate. And so when you can really go inward and realize, what is my body communicating to me that I need to address so that this feeling doesn't come up anymore.
Yes, I love that. Because feeling is people push down their feelings because they need to do, but it's like that's the thing that helps you to know what to do or helps you to draw the line or to say something. Um, you know, how you feel about things can really, you communicating that can really help your partner to show up the way that you need them to show up.
Yeah, a powerful language. I don't know what your thoughts are on this. Some like words or lines that you can use when you're in that space of feeling like your partner's maybe up against you, like almost like an attack. Like you just feel like they're not on the same team. One line that I've used in the past is, "How can I help you?" Because then all of a sudden it takes the onus off of like, "You're doing this to me. I
Mm-hmm.
don't like when you do this," and it takes the pointing fingers and making them feel bad. Like you're projecting your anger onto them because you want them to feel just as bad as you feel in this moment. Saying, just pausing, checking in with those feelings and being like, okay, I feel angry. Why do I feel angry? I feel angry because maybe it's a fight about bills and money. Like, I just feel really scared right now that we're not going to have enough money yet. I'm projecting it as anger and getting mad at them for spending too much. When
Mm-hmm.
really, I just need to communicate that and say, how can I help you not spend as much? Or whatever it is, like, how can I help you? Because those are such loving words. Who doesn't want help? Well, maybe some people.
Right. Yeah, there's some people that don't. But you know, when you tap into the to those words that really make that your partner feel like you're not criticizing and coming at them in a way to attack them, you know, when they put that wall down, it's like, okay, well, since you're saying that you want to help me with this, let me allow you to know what's going on in my mind so that we can maybe come up with like a solution or begin to solve this problem, and really think of the problem as the issue and not the partner as the issue. So yeah, like really helping, you know, and that language is good, I think, as far as like creating a team, helping your partner to look like we're on the same team. Like, I'm not really trying to fight with you. That's
Yeah.
not the goal. I just don't want this problem to continue to cause issues for us in the future. That's the real issue. And I like that you kind of focus on like saying the actual message. Like, what is it that you want to say? What is it that you really want them to work on, or work with you on, I should say, so that they can actually do something about it. Because when you're saying, you're a horrible person, or you should have did this, and and they're feeling like you're attacking their character, that's not really a space to be like, okay, well, let me work with you. It's like, no, I need to defend myself against you because you done told lies about me and you're trying to make me look like this bad person. So then it's like derails that conversation and goes totally left versus like, let's work together to figure out what we can do that's going to help our relationship.
Yeah. Okay. So we're listening better. That's one of our big steps. We
Mm-hmm.
are getting to know our partner. We're trying to have fun. What else do we need to do to really get a stronger connection, stronger marriage rebuilt?
Um, what I would say is commitment. So for and so the definition for me for commitment is really like, are you somebody who's going to roll out or leave as soon as there's a rough spot, or are you someone that we're actually going to figure it out and work it out? And I know that that's in you, because I think that brings out about different results. So how committed are you to the relationship and to your partner, and do they know that your plan or your goal is to make sure that both of y'all are good, and it's not me against you, or I get what I want at the expense of your happiness. It's both of us being committed to moving forward together, um, to live this life and enjoy this life.
How do you have that conversation? How are you like, do you want a divorce or we want to work on it? Is it black and white, or what do we do when we're having those kind of conversations?
Ooh, I don't know for you. I haven't seen it. I haven't seen that play out in a black and white kind of way. Um, like, there's so many moving parts. Um, and to be honest, sometimes people are asking for a divorce, and it's like, do you really want a divorce, or you just want to divorce this problem that you have? Because
Ooh,
that's a
that's
very
good.
different conversation.
I'm jotting that one down. Do you really want a divorce or do you want to divorce the problem? Like, instead of making things so big, really, let's get down to the nitty gritty. This is what's going on. It's not this big of an issue. But things get really blown out of proportion when it feels like fight after fight, or resentment after resentment, or jealousy after jealousy. Like, it's just me. Sometimes it's one issue. Going back to, what is it that I really loved about my partner, and
Mhm.
is that aspect of them still there? And can I focus on the love of that piece? and maybe we can work on the other pieces, not having to divorce the whole person, just the problem. That's genius.
Yeah, and that feels a lot better. Because I can work with that. Because that's not me in my mind thinking like I need to, because like the conversation about divorce is like, okay, so now I need to start cutting myself off so it doesn't hurt as much, and I need to stop feeling certain things. And it's like this whole distancing process that creates an atmosphere where, yeah, that's where you're gonna go, because y'all are unintentionally unintentionally not knowing each other and distancing from each other. That's going to create the divide. But just really focusing on what do I actually want, and can I get what I want, and are you here to listen to that, and willing to work this out, like, which is not the easiest thing. And I'm not even going to sit here and lie and say, oh, that's such an easy process. But with both people being invested in that, it does make it easier. But it does mean that you have to slow things down and really pay attention to how you got to this place, and how you can make sure that you're not creating an environment where you're going, going back to a place that you don't want to be in.
Yeah. Any tips for prefacing a conversation like this, so that, again, is it something that you schedule? Like, I really want to have a serious conversation. I'm coming from this conversation with a place of love. I know what I might say may sound like I'm attacking you, but I'm not meaning to attack you. I'm trying to like really give our marriage a real shot here. Like, how do you prevent your partner from really being on the defense when you're having these conversations that, yeah, may bring up some of the things that you don't like, and they may take it personally? Any tips for that?
Well, to be honest, I like the things that you just shared. Like, I think that those are good. And I also, like, sometimes it's what I'll do, especially if I'm just working with one person at that moment. I'll say, blame it on me. Like, just say that I said that it might be helpful to bring up these things, and that you have intention on, like, state what the intention is, so that there's no room for assumptions. Like, I really want to be able to communicate better, so I'm trying to start this new communication style. So bear with me, right? So you're kind of like asking for their help in that way, that allows them to know, okay, you're going to try something different because you really want to have a better conversation. So let me hear what you have to say.
Oh my gosh. And if you don't have a counselor right now, maybe just say, hey, I was listening to Beth and Dr. Kia and their Instagram live, and they suggested that maybe we should talk about this. Do you mind if I open this conversation?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, then I like that, because it takes the onus off of like, I'm just trying to bring in a solution. And so because it comes from a third party, then it might sound like it's a bit more received.
Right. And the fact that you actually have looked into doing something different because you're interested in, the relationship going in a positive direction. So I think all of those things speak volumes.
All right. We had a question a little bit earlier. It said, sometimes a significant other may say, you're asking too much of me. So yeah, you say, I would like to have more time with you. I'd like it if you could help me help me with clean up after dinner. I'd like it if all these different things. What do you say if they're like, you know what, you're asking too much of me? And maybe it doesn't sound as nice as that. Maybe it just comes across as, no, I don't have time for that. How do we navigate that one?
Right. And I think that those are two different responses. Like, the I don't have time for that. It could be coming from the same place, but it's like, because that sounds like, I'm so busy that I can't deal with this right now. I'm so overwhelmed that I can't, have these conversations or do whatever it is that you're asking me to do. So I would say to kind of step back and try to understand where they're coming from, so that can help you to better have the conversation with them, or even ask them, like, I understand that you're saying that you don't have time right now, but when will you have time? Because I think that this is important. I want to make sure that we are, moving in a way that's going to help our relationship, because I feel like the stress and the tension is going to create a space where we're not connected, and, can even lead to us not, just being in this house and not being happy for years on end. And I don't want that. So just letting your partner know, or getting information about what time is going to be good. Like, yeah, I understand you're busy, but when can you create time for this? And if it is too much, and you see that their plate is like overflowing with all of this stuff, because sometimes we don't even know what's in our partner's head. Like, you ask them a question, can you help me with the dishes? And they're like, do you know that I just did 10 things for you? You didn't even say thank you. Like, can you consider that? So it's almost like, it's important to know where they're coming from and where that response is coming from, because that's going to dictate how you're going to respond to your partner.
Yeah, absolutely. And so often it's not about the dishes. It's not about, I'm trying to think of all these examples. It's not about the crumbs on the counter, the socks on the floor. It's not always about that stuff. It's often rooted so much deeper. That's just the surface issue that's really bringing up the emotion. But
Mm-hmm.
often it's so much deeper that you just feel like things are so unfair, or you feel like you're never good enough, you feel a certain way. It's often there's a belief below it that you have about yourself, about your marriage, that really needs to be addressed. And that emotion, that anger that's coming up about the dishes, the crumbs, the socks, is really just a massive clue into work that needs to be done within yourself to validate who you are, like that you are good enough, that you are loved, that you know what, things can be fair. You just have to set maybe healthy boundaries so that you are asking for more help. And even though someone might be saying, I don't have enough time, correct me if I'm wrong, but often that means it's not a priority. And not in a mean way. It's just like, I have all these things and that's just not something I want to do. So sometimes you have to ask for help outside too, if you can have those
Oh,
resources.
yeah.
Sometimes my kids have a chore list now that my husband's like, kids shouldn't have to do that many chores. I'm like, I don't want to do it all. I need some help around here.
Right. And either we're going to spread the love in here, or we're going to pay somebody to come and do something.
Yeah.
But I think that's a valid point. Like, sometimes it is about taking stuff off your plate, and sometimes it does have to be somebody outside of the house to be able to do that, or children.
Children, I know. You know what? I teaches them responsibility. Yeah, my husband's like, they don't do a great job vacuuming. I'm like, they're learning to vacuum. You know what? If they each spend 5 minutes vacuuming the house, I can go through in 5 and pick up the crumbs they missed. I'm like, that saves me 15 minutes. I'm good with that. And it teaches them responsibility. So sometimes that's another belief. I have to do it all. We feel resentful often as wives because we feel like we have to do it all.
Yeah.
Who said you have to do it all? Is it because you think you do it better than others? Do you have high standards? Like, if it's something that you really want done a certain way, then you need to do that. But if you can delegate to others, it might not be done exactly, but at least it's something you don't have to do, and we can celebrate that. And then you have a bit more time for yourself, because there's inner work that probably needs to be done. So you might need that extra 10 minutes to do a journal or meditate or work out.
Yes. The inner work is important, because that really sometimes the relationship we have with other people, it mirrors the relationship we have with ourselves. So we don't give ourselves grace, we don't give our partners grace. Like, and that's a whole thing too. So yeah, making time for you is important.
I want to talk about that because I think that's a huge piece of solving marriage troubles, is realizing that your partner's your greatest teacher. And the reason they're your greatest teacher is because they are mirroring to you exactly what you need to kind of work on within yourself. So let's talk about this. I think that was great. I'm glad you brought up the mirror. So let's dive in. Where do we want to start with mirrors and relationships?
Yeah, the interesting thing about your, being in a relationship, because people are always like, oh, I need to work on myself before I get in this relationship. And it's like, yeah, that's nice. But in reality, when you get in the relationship, you're going to be like, oh, I have to work on all these things, because now you can actually see them. And your partner gets to see the things that you don't see about yourself, right? And can actually relay that information to you, which make you happy or not. But and some of the ways that they interact with you is maybe because of the way that you're showing up in the relationship too, which then means that I need to be more mindful of the things that I'm doing, because I see this in me, and I want to make sure that I'm not doing that, because I don't want it done to me, and I don't necessarily want my partner to feel like I'm feeling either. So I think that being in a relationship is awesome, because you get to work on all these things that may have been problems for a long time that you just didn't even know about. Because many times, like, friends, and I don't know if this happens, if you see this too, but friends are not always going to tell you certain things. They're just not going to be there during, like, oh, I know that she's not going to like that. Oh, I'm not going to like invite her to that because of X, Y, and Z. Or, and not in a mean way, like, oh, like you can't come, but like, oh, this is not going to be good for her, versus a partner who's like, we are together every day, or, we have to we're living this life together. So did you know that you were doing this and that? And then you ask a friend, they're like, yeah, I knew that you did that. So it's like, it's the things that you don't know about yourself that come to the surface that you end up having to work on, I think, in a partnership, like when you're married.
For sure. I'm just going to say, if anyone has any questions, pop them in. I believe we probably won't necessarily give advice, but we can speak to certain topics. But before we take any questions, I wanted to talk about that. I think marriages are incredible because they are these almost like microscopes for everything that's going on inside you that needs to be worked on, because there's so much truth in it and you spend so much time together that the things that really need to be worked on within yourself come out in such a magnified form. And so often we want to avoid those things, which is why we're like, our marriage sucks. But you know what, really, if you can do the inner work and no longer feel you can absolutely get to a place where you no longer feel triggered by your partner, as long as there's not addictions or abuse in there, and certain boundaries aren't being crossed. But if you can get to a place where things don't bother you and you can articulate and communicate in such a loving way that it's just such a beautiful process. You feel so much lighter. You don't feel heavy. You don't feel exhausted by the ongoing arguments. When you can do that inner work, I usually suggest some inner work first before you actually, or you could do couples counseling, which really focus on helping the marriage. I wonder if you would agree with this, really focusing on the marriage, and then some personal counseling. Or do you feel like in your practice, you do marriage counseling, you talk about the marriage and the individual and kind of give homework for both?
Well, we usually end up doing both, and giving homework for both. However, sometimes what will happen is depending on the severity of what's happening, we might recommend that one or both people go and work on some individual stuff as well. That's deeper than just the relationship stuff. But yeah, so to be honest, and in the coaching work that we do, we rewind, because we talk about like how the relationship with yourself reflects the relationship with all the other people, including your significant other. So it really is about paying attention to the things that you're saying, the things that you're not saying, the things that you're doing, the things that you're thinking, and how that's really making you show up in your relationship or respond to your significant other. So yeah, so it depends. It's kind of like a mixture of both, depending upon the severity of what's happening.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's really, really important what you just said. It's a combination of the two, because sometimes maybe you would agree or disagree, but sometimes when you give couples homework, such as like using your I statements, I feel this way, I feel this way, and sometimes after a couple of weeks, they don't stick anymore. Sometimes that can be clues that, you know what, there's something deeper that's maybe underneath that, so that you can properly communicate your feelings. What are your thoughts on that? Like when strategies don't stick after like a session with couples, is it sometimes a clue that, you know what, there's some inner work that might need to be done so that we can really get that strategy to stick? Or is it, yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
I would say a combination of both. Like the thing about like the communication techniques, so there's tons of them, right? And they work really well. But the foundation of your relationship, kind of like going back to the friendship, is going to be important. And the way you develop friendships really does go back to how you're showing up for yourself. Like, are you actually making sure that your significant other knows you enough, or are you holding not saying things, which is not good, because it puts a lot of pressure on you, and it leaves you with doing a lot of stuff for them and not being happy in the moment. That works, right? But 5 or 10 years, you're gonna get tired of that, because it's like, okay, how are you going to show me that you love me and you care about me? But are you actually loving and caring about yourself in a way that's good for them to be able to do that for you? Because if you're just catering to them, then where was the love for you in the beginning of the relationship when you were doing that? And I'm not saying ignore your significant other and just be selfish and prioritize yourself, but you do need to make sure that you have the self-care and that you are thinking about, how is this going to impact me, right? Because how it impacts you is going to impact them eventually. And
Yes,
it's going to come
absolutely.
in a backhanded way that you're not going to like, because you have less control over it in year 5 than you do in year 1. Because in year 1, you're like, okay, I realize that I don't like this, but let me communicate that in a way that says that, and says what I actually do want, or like that would help this relationship, versus, oh, I'm gonna just let that go, I'm gonna let that go, and then year 5, now I'm going to tell you off about it because you done had more than 3 strikes and I'm sick and tired of it.
Yeah.
So But yeah, that's showing up for yourself. And that's, creating boundaries for you in the relationship, which sometimes gets skipped.
Well said. Okay, we have a question here. Can you elaborate on how your spouse, significant other, is a mirror image of you? I think a great way to explain this is if I'm here, here's my mirror, which is my husband. Really, when I feel triggered, so if I feel angry at them, that anger is really mirroring to me things that I need to work on within myself. So, for instance, say it's Valentine's Day. I really like flowers on Valentine's Day. My partner didn't get me flowers. I then all of a sudden feel really upset. I feel rejected. I feel like he doesn't even know who I am. He doesn't see me. That is a mirror showing me maybe areas within myself that I need to own. I need to maybe communicate more within myself or have the confidence to articulate my needs better. So often it's not like we always say, if they would only change, things would get better. But often when we feel triggered, we feel an emotion, that really just means there's something within us that might need to shift. We might need to love ourselves a certain way first so that we can properly communicate our needs or give ourselves something or feel like we're good enough to deserve those flowers. And realize it's not just them, it's really something within us.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say? How would you want to add, or how could you add on to the mirror examples?
No, I think, to be honest, I think that that's a good example. The whole thing with being, like, for example, being triggered, because many people think that they've worked on their triggers, right? Like before they got in a relationship, that whole thing, like, oh, let me work on me before I get into a relationship. But the reality is those things are still a part of you. They're still there. And so it's not necessarily about eliminating them. It's about managing them. So if your significant other does something that triggers you, then that says a lot. It doesn't say anything about them. It doesn't say that they meant to trigger you. It doesn't say that they didn't care about you. It says that they did a certain thing that triggered something within inside of you that's linked to some past event or some, feeling that you've had before that now you're responding to in this moment. So yeah, so I think that what you said really does paint a good picture of what that actually looks like, because then you're triggered, and sometimes you go back to acting a way that you thought that you would never act. Like, I've never done this with anybody else, but it's like, maybe if you think hard enough and you go back to your history, there might have been a time where you've done that, and maybe it's just been so long ago because it hasn't been something this, somebody this close to you and an issue this significant to bring that back to the forefront. So then it's like, okay, like for somebody saying something about, I don't know, somebody not when I feel like I'm disrespected, I'm triggered, right? So now this thing that he's done is disrespect, and so because of that, now I feel all of these horrible things, and I'm going to respond in this way that really it's not going to help my relationship, but might make me feel good in the moment because I done cursed you out or I told you off or whatever else. So yeah, so I think that was a good analogy of how it just shows you, oh, I have work to do. Oh, that still bothers me. Oh, like if somebody else does that, and I'm really tired, or I'm already agitated, I might respond in a negative way because I have less patience. So it's a reminder of these are things that I need to work on and make sure that they don't control me and control my responses, or control my relationship.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing here is one of the big foundations to building a stronger relationship, marriage, is the inner work. So let's talk about how to actually do the inner work. Yes, you can go to therapy. Yes, you can hire a marriage coach like myself. What are some other ways? So I'll give you a couple examples and I'd love to hear your thoughts. I think it starts with as simple as, number one, realizing that you're angry, you're mad, you're jealous, you're feeling a low vibe emotion that isn't happiness, excitement, contentment. And it's okay, we have our moments. We don't always want to be up in the high vibe zone, but those are these massive clues into areas within yourself that need to do work. So sometimes just getting really curious and being a detective in your life. What do those feelings actually mean? And we don't always know right away. You're just like, I just feel mad. I just feel mad that my husband just keeps spending money and he seems to not really care about the family budget. And really that could actually mean that you have a bit of a scarcity mindset. You're worried that there's not enough. And that can often spread into other areas. You're like, I don't feel good enough for my job. I've never felt good enough as a daughter. I don't feel good enough as a mom. I feel like I'm a worse mom. I have mom guilt. Like sometimes not having enough money, it can stem into so many different areas. Lack mentality. So sometimes you just have to get curious, like where does it start off, and ask yourself why. Like, why am I angry that he spent so much money? I'm angry because we don't have enough money. Why do I think I don't have enough money? Well, I feel like I don't have enough money because I just feel like we're paycheck to paycheck. But you can get in deeper, like why do I feel like I'm not enough? And you just keep going why and why and why, and see if you can get down to the bottom of what is the root of me being so upset about the money. It's not just about the money. Usually it's deeper.
Right. It's about what the money means and what it represents in your life. And, and identifying the patterns that you have. And sometimes you do need to journal, or you need to do some like meditation or some level of relaxation that allows you to kind of tap into yourself, have time for yourself, and just have time to look at some of the things that you're doing that are not working for you. So, how am I showing up in my relationship in a way that might not be working for me because it's not helping me get the response that I want? One of the things that I like to tell people is focus on where you're going and your goals, right? What is the goal? And is your current behavior aligned with that goal? And if it's not, then really looking inside, it's like, okay, so why is it so important for me to do this right now versus focus on that goal? Like, and why is it that I'm on this detour as opposed to this direct route to where I'm going? So like really just paying attention to what you're doing, what are your patterns, and giving yourself time and space to be able to do that.
Time and space. That's exactly what you need to do this work. I realized that I didn't realize the time. I don't have the time on my clock. Are you okay to answer a couple more questions, or do you need to get going?
Yeah, I can do a couple more questions.
Okay, perfect. I apologize. I know we're only supposed to do a half an hour live, everyone, but we're going to do a bonus extra here. Okay, how about this one? I have done everything that I know possible how to do. I watch different ways on how to connect with my wife. My wife doesn't call me or doesn't take time to listen to me. I ask her questions. I ask her how I can show up, and she says I'm all good. So let's paint a picture of a situation where you feel like you're communicating your needs, what you need. You're asking them what they need, and you're not getting a response back. How do you tackle this where you feel like I'm just exhausted? I've tried so many things in regards to communicating my needs.
Can you repeat that? You said
Sorry. Okay. I'll just summarize it. So if you're a husband, wife, and you just feel like you aren't getting the attention you need, your needs aren't being fully met, you keep communicating them in such loving ways, and your partner's like, my needs are met, I'm good, and they just don't seem to reciprocate back. Do you just keep asking for your needs to be met, or how do you approach that situation?
No, well, I would first want to know how was it being said, because sometimes the way that we communicate does not land the way that we're hoping for it to land. And a quick example of that would be like, so people come in at the 100th hour, like, okay, our relationship is on the brink of divorce now. Can you fix the situation? But it's like, we've been talking about this for a long time. And this person's like, well, I didn't know it was that serious. So it's like, is it how serious is it registering to the other person as just like something that's not a big deal, or something that is a big deal? And are they fully understanding what it is that you're saying? So I would want to know that first, because even though it sounds super small and almost non-significant, like I can't tell you how many times that it's like, it's a huge, like, just miscommunication, disconnection in the communication process. So that's first. And then I would want to know, like, since one person is good and the other person is not, both people are not good. Because if that other person knows how bad this really is, then they're not going to have those good feelings for long, because it's coming to an end. Maybe not because of a divorce, but maybe because now I'm going to prioritize my friends and do all the stuff with them because I'm not getting anything from you. So it's like, understanding that being bad for one person is bad for both people. So it really comes down to can I communicate it in a way that needs to be, that is able to be heard? Can we create time to be able to really focus on the things that we need to focus on? And sometimes that does mean like we need to leave our typical space and go someplace else and actually like work on our relationship. There's like workbooks and all types of things that you can use to help you to be able to really get your needs met in the relationship. And then of course, if all else fails and you really need the support, you can always like reach out to a coach or a counselor or something like that as well as third party to help to navigate the conversation.
Yeah, and then final tip, your partner doesn't want to go to counseling. Then what do you do?
Well, because not everybody believes in counseling, or coaching or any of that. So then,
Not that they don't believe. Sometimes there's a fear there. There's a fear of opening up. There's a fear of other people knowing what's actually going on. Fear of being judged. I would say there's a lot of other stuff that's actually going on, which keeps a lot of people from going. It can be a scary and intimidating process that really isn't. It's a very safe space, but the idea can be really terrifying for some.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with that. And so sometimes what I have is people that are working on themselves. So we do what's called relationship counseling for one, which means that you are actually doing all the things that you need to do in the relationship. And we're looking at the ways that you can assist in that process, because you can't change your partner, but you can change yourself to help other people to show up the way that you need them to show up in your life. So, if we don't get two, then we'll get one and we'll work with that and we'll start from there. So, and many times it does work.
It
and
totally does. It totally does. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but it totally does. Like, we're 50%. One person is 50%. Imagine the change that you can make with one person. One person who feels like they're meeting their own needs, one person who doesn't feel like they need to engage in arguments the same. That's a huge shift in a marriage.
Right, because the other person can't do the same thing. Like, it's hard to argue with you if you're not going to argue back, right? And initially, the one person will be like, well, I'm waiting on you to come back and argue the way that you've been doing. But as time goes on, it's like, okay, well, now I feel crazy because I'm doing this thing that we used to do that you're not participating in anymore. So it creates the shift. It starts to shift. So yeah, I would say definitely do something on your own if your partner is not in a space or is not ready. And sometimes that makes them ready to really work on things or want to do something different.
I think that's a great way to end it. I really do. A stronger marriage, I think in the end, really comes down to a strong foundation, which starts with yourself. And if your partner's in a good spot, but if they don't want to go to counseling, really work on yourself, and that can help create a really solid marriage. All right. How can all our listeners, how can all our viewers, how can they get in touch with you if they want to seek out any of your services, learn more about you? Where can we find you?
On Instagram, y'all can see them at relationship_boosters, or you can send a email to relationshipboosters@gmail.com.
Amazing. And any of your listeners that are out there right now, I'm Beth, and you can find me again on Instagram. I have a great little guide, 3 ways to save your marriage, but it really is all about, my foundation is all about working on yourself. So check that guide out if you want. It's in my bio. But this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope everyone got a ton of value out of this. I know I sure did. My favorite quote is, do you want to divorce the person or divorce the issue?
Yes.
Amazing. So thank you so much. Any final words?
Thanks for having me. I don't think I have anything. I think that we covered a whole lot. Hopefully you guys will, like, if you're in a space where you want to have a healthy marriage and relationship, that you'll follow up with one of us to help you to be able to get to that process, or just check out some of the free stuff that we have that you can, that can help you get started. Because sometimes it's just about getting started.
It's totally about getting started. All right. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.
Bye.